Now that Nationals is over and most players are bored out of their mind with the current metagame, patiently awaiting for Justice Hunters, and rightfully so. Extremely toxic formats will do that to you, and I definitely completely understand. Well, in this video, despite the format being toxic and a little boring, I'm going to break down 5 solid rogue decks that can compete with the current metagame and metagames beyond. Starting off with number 5, Chrischron. Chrischron is a very capable and viable deck that utilizes its graveyard to gain abilities via cards like Chrischron. Can't pronounce this properly, but I'm gonna say this. Styron that has the ability to banish itself in the graveyard once per turn to add a Chrischron monster from deck to your hand, or its counterpart Chrischron Smiger to add one Chrischron spell slash trap from your deck to your hand. And what makes these cards worth it is the amount of advantage they gain you. You can gain from dumping them to the graveyard via Chrischron Salvador. That allows you to dump 2 from deck on summon. The Chrischron deck, like most decks in the current metagame, thrive on making your opponents waste his resources. So if this deck gets to play, typical inboards consist of Cyber Dragon Affinity, Cyber Dragon Chrischron Terstaros that had the ability to synchro summon on the opponent's turn, and a Chrischron Trap Chrischron Cluster that allows you to shuffle one Chrischron card from graveyard to destroy one card on the opponent's field, or 2 or more cards if the Chrischron players control a synchro monster. Now, this field doesn't seem like much, but with Tristaro's ability to synchro summon on the opponent's turn, alongside the Omni Negate, Cyber Dragon, and Affinity, backed up by the Trap card, giving you insane field removal, the basic end board can be really threatening to the opponent. And honestly speaking, real talk, the basic end board can be made via one card, which makes Chrischron a good deck for the upcurrent metagame. There's tons of different Chrischron one card combos. Check out my boy Yassen for them videos. He does have a spreadsheet if you guys are interested in that kind of thing. But also within this meta, speaking of my boy Yassen, he top 3 YCS with the Chrischron deck. Just showing you guys how powerful the deck can be. So make sure to check out his channel for the spice. In addition to Yasin topping with the deck, there have been multiple local, regional YCS toppers around the US, just showcasing how powerful this deck can be. But unfortunately, Chrischron does have some drawbacks. One drawback being it has a hard time playing through Lancia. Now there is Chrischron combos that can play under Lancia. That gives you a kind of like half boards from what I've seen. But with Lancia being heavily into the metagame due to decks like Malice, that is one of the big drawbacks that hurt the Chrischron deck. And in addition to that, its drawback is being a rogue deck, which means it's hard to pilot. So when you typically have rogue decks like Christrons, if you mess up one time, you're cooked. One minor misplay, you might as well pack it up because you're gonna be at table 500. And upside of Christron, however, while it is somewhat under the radar due to Malice, Mitsurugi, and Ryzel, the deck doesn't have to worry much about getting hit on the next ban list, making it a good investment. And in addition to the release of K9, the deck can utilize combos with those cards as well, giving K9 an alternative versus the deck that K9 is currently being hyped with versus. So with all that being said, I had to include Chris Ryan on this list at number 5 just for those reasons alone. Coming to this list at number 4, we have Gem Knights. Now, this is one is a bit of a shocker. However, after this past weekend at the NAWCQ, it showed up and showed out, netting itself third place in a trip to the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championships. The player Isaiah took the weekend by storm with his going second strategy, utilizing Gem Knight's quick OTK abilities with cards like Gem Knight Master Diamond that allows you to special summon up to 3 Gem Knight monsters from your extra deck, ignoring some of the conditions by sending it face up from the field to the graveyard. What makes Gem Knight extremely strong is the fact that it has insane ways to perform fusion summons from its link monster that allows you to pay 1,000 life points to fusion summon from the grave, or a spell card Scatter Fusion that allows you to fusion summon by using materials in deck from the opponent's if the opponent has a monster. Similar to things like Shadow Fusion, Branded Fusion, things like that. So when you factor in the amount of board breakers we have in the game, Isaiah's being the player who got third place, and there was multiple people who topped the NAWCQ while doing research in the video that I noticed that ran Christron. When you got things like Lightning Storm, Feather Duster, and Salesman, it's no surprise that the deck almost won the NAWCQ because it was completely under the radar. Cons of the deck, however, it is a going second strategy. So while Isaiah did get third place, when you have decks like Ryzio, Mermail, even we know those pseudo rogue FTK strategies, to do well going second not only takes a lot of skill, but it takes a little bit of luck. Because if you ever find yourself in a scenario where you don't open anything and have the playoff pure engine, you're cooked. Coming as this at number 3, we have Mermail. Similar to Gymnite, Mermail is another insane going second deck. But what puts Mermail above Gymnite slightly, in my opinion, on this list is the fact that the deck is just as daily going first as well as it is going second. And by doing multiple different things, the Mermail deck perfectly consistently ends their first board on Moulin Glacier and Barrier Statue if they decide to go first. Moulin Glacier is a hand rip, so you're gonna get 2 hand rips out of your opponent's hand if you set it up right. And Barrier Statue, as you already know by all the other statue cards, lock the opponent out of any other summon unless they're gonna do water. And there's too many to count on depending on what their player preference is. So depending on how the Mermail player played their inboard is gonna be slightly different. However, getting hand ripped and getting barrier statue locked just kind of sucks, honestly. And then when Mermails go second, they're gonna go OTK like crazy. But what makes this deck just as scary because it's just straight gas and not a lot of ways to beat it outside of drawing Droll. And sometimes even Droll isn't enough thanks to their cards like Deep Sea Minstrel that allows the Mermail player to banish one card out of the opponent's hand until the end phase by pitching it and another water monster. Effectively, depending on the hand, triggering the Mermail combos by itself. So its biggest combo starter is also a card that gets rid of the opposing hand traps that allows this deck to do well. The biggest drawback to Mermail, however, it is a combo deck, and sometimes combo decks just draw bad. And when you draw bad with decks like Mermail, it's kind of hard to come back, just like anything, especially if your opponent has Droll. So as long as cards like Droll stay in the metagame, it kind of keeps decks like Mermail in check. I remember even like pre-nationals, Mermail was just insane because they were putting up boards of multiple totally awesome, which is really cool. Well, not really cool, rather, but like it's really scary, which is why totally awesome got hit. But the fact that the deck is also one of the cons to the deck, however, is very skill intensive and require a lot of thinking. So if you're playing a deck like Mermail, expect a lot of burnout between 8 to 9 round events. So with that being said, I have to have Mermail on this list at number 3 for those reasons alone. Because typically players who play this deck, if you guys are veterans of the game, you already know decks that require a lot of thinking, a lot of grinding. By the time you get to round 6 or 7, you're cooked mentally, and you're not gonna want to play Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. You're gonna go home and take a nap. Coming in list at number 2, Lunaite. Now, I will say Lunaite should be number 1 on this list. I mean, it has one of the most classic game mechanics built into it, Protect the Castle, via its card, Lunaite Dancer, whom once he is on the field, your opponent doesn't have an out, they almost auto lose. Lunaite Dancer is unaffected by all card effects except Lunaite cards, and has the ability to quick effect by sending one Lunaite monster from your extra deck to graveyard to destroy all monsters your opponent controls, effectively making it a really annoying card to deal with. Lunaite's biggest issue, however, is its playstyle. This deck has been Why this deck is being piloted and talked about by a lot of competitive community, it kind of made players honestly have a side deck for it, which is pretty much like my buddy Tony in his feature match at the NAWZQ, where he beat an opposing.
Grab a unicorn? Your board bothers me. Merry Christmas?
Light player because he side deck Lava Golem and just Lava Golem him mid game. Or me, for example, at the NAWZQ, I main deck 3 Diddy Crow, which can hurt the deck a lot if you time it right. And I also main deck that new Mitsurugi monster, which is effectively just a pseudo kaiju that's searchable. Unfortunately, as good as the decks like Lunaite is, like most road decks, once players figure out the choke points, they have a hard time, and it's kind of hard for them to come back if people play against it properly. So that, with that being said, I have Lunaite on this list at number 2, but don't let that get to you because even though it's number 2, if you sleep on Lunaite, you will get cooked. And last on this list, guys, I want to talk about Sky Striker. Sky Striker, and not mention it because it's the best deck on this list, but I have it at number 1 because the deck just really has a lot of grit. And honestly, I'll let you guys decide if the deck should be number 1 on this list or not. But the deck has been around for years, and it's one of those decks that I kind of hate playing against a good Sky Striker player because once they start popping off, it's kind of hard for them to beat them. It has multiple going second strategies, multiple going first strategies, depending on how the opponent builds it. And with the Alliance Insight dropping with the new Sky Striker patch update, this deck is way more consistent in the modern era through cards like Sky Striker Engage that allow you to search your deck for any striker card, and if you have 3 more cards in your graveyard you draw. Now Engage is the older card, but it's the cream of the cream of the deck. Sky Striker has an insane control-based OTK strategy, so its core engine is designed to burn through your opponent's resources while recycling through its own cards and gain advantage via Sky Striker Kagari, which allow you to add one Sky Striker spell card from your graveyard to your hand. And with its new cards from Alliance Insight, it just makes the strategy way more consistent. Sky Striker A0 allows that same recursion by adding a spell from deck or grave to hand, and Sky Striker Linkage allows you to essentially summon any Sky Striker monster from your extra deck with a bonus ability that boosts that monster attack by 1,000, which effectively allows Sky Striker to get those quick OTKs in. But the downfall of Sky Striker, however, is the fact that it is an older strategy, so people are kind of used to playing against the deck, which plays against the people who are using the deck. And in a format full of DD Crows and Bitch Shields, it kind of makes the pure variant of this deck harder to play. However, they did have a pretty cool scene in the feature match at the NAWCQ. But, playing decks like this in longer events in a field of like Bishields, DD Crows, things like that, it kind of is going to make the deck inconsistently and not top. Because losing Ray mid game in a pure build hurts this deck a lot. However, the future is bright for them due to the upcoming release of Sky Striker Camellia, which we don't have a release date for in the TCG, but it's going to boost the deck's consistency a lot by getting spells from the graveyard faster because somebody dumps a spell from the deck to graveyard if you have 3 or less, and being a pseudo monster removal when it leaves the field. I believe through an opponent's card effect. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below. But yeah, man, with all that being said, that's the reason why I had to have Sky Striker on the list number 1. It's kind of like a personal favorite of mine with a lot of these road decks. I've considered picking the deck up myself, but I know how, good it is, and with the right pilot, the deck can cook most players. So, with all that being said, this is my top 5 best road decks for the current format. If you guys like this video format, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm just trying something different on the channel. Also, be sure to check out the Discord. We're building a competitive community over there. Link in the description down below. We have 52 members currently, but we're growing every single day. And also, while you're in the description, click into the Discord. Be sure to check out my channel sponsors. TradingCardMin.com for 10% off, and Imperial Duelist TradingCardMin.com for 7% off, and Imperial Duels for 10% off. All right, man, it's your boy Rogue Hero, and I'm signing out. Peace. See you guys in the next video. Peace.